Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to another video. Thank you for watching. And I'm doing something a little different today. But anyway, let's get started. So imagine a murder mystery where you already know who the culprits are right from the start. What if the real mystery isn't the who, but the why, and what happens after? So today I'm reviewing Donna Tartt's cult classic, The Secret History, a novel that doesn't just subvert the murder mystery, it completely rewrites the accepted rules. So, we're going to be talking about elitism, guilt, ancient philosophy, and why this book is still influential over 3 decades later. So I usually review Korean literature and translation or Korea-related books, and it's easy for me to review the Korean books because I've been reviewing Korean books for radio shows and magazines for over 10 years. So whenever I want to do a Korean book review, I can just polish up one of my old scripts and record it for the channel. But I've been thinking about recording more non-Korean books. But of course, this means I have to do all the work from scratch. So it takes me a bit longer. I'm quite busy, so I don't have time to work on this as much as I would like. But anyway, I reviewed the Donna Tartt novel, The Goldfinch, like actually several months ago on the channel, and it was quite a popular video. It was more popular than most of my Korean literature reviews. So I thought I'll review one of Donna Tartt's other novels, and I started working on this a while ago, and sort of did little bits and pieces here and there. And it might be a bit disjointed, but I just got fed up sort of tinkering with it and figured I'm just going to record it now. So, yes, today I'm reviewing The Secret History. And The Secret History is the story of Richard. Richard is a college student who leaves behind his modest, working class, even Californian background to attend an elite liberal arts college in New England. It's actually a fictional liberal arts college. And Richard is disenchanted and maybe even a little embarrassed and ashamed of his working class background. And upon his arrival at this college in New England, he's drawn into an elite and eccentric group of very charismatic and appealing students. And this little clique, this little group of students, they're all studying ancient Greek, and they have a very charismatic professor called Julian Morrow. And the group comprises of Henry, who's very aloof and intellectual, Bunny, who is more flamboyant personality, Francis, and Charles and Camilla. And Charles and Camilla are twins, and Camilla is the only girl in the group. And they are insular, very intellectual, and increasingly obsessed with ancient ideals, with beauty, and with pursuing some kind of transcendence. They're brilliant students. Most of them are brilliant students. Bunny, not so much, maybe. They're obsessive, and they believe that they are superior to the rest of the students on the campus, and indeed to the rest of society in general. And very soon, Richard can't help but be drawn into their world of beauty and secrets, and the alluring Camilla, and ultimately into some very serious crimes and significantly immoral acts. So I'll give a little summary. There's going to be spoilers in this review. So if you don't want any spoilers, please go and read the novel and then come back and watch this later if you want. So I'm going to get into the spoilers now. So let me sip my tea. I'm sorry, I'm still getting over a bit of a cold, so I might sound a little croaky. So anyway, at the beginning of the novel, we learn that Bunny, whose real name is Edmund Corcoran, and Bunny has been murdered by his close friends. And the book is really the unraveling of why this happened, and the impact that it has on the little group of friends, the university, and just exactly how this impacts them, and the very unfortunate places that it leads. We discover that Henry, who is essentially the intellectual leader of the group, orchestrated a bacchanalian ritual that accidentally led to the death of a local farmer. Bunny finds out about this and he begins to unravel psychologically. He doesn't seem to have the mental fortitude or maturity to possessing this knowledge. And his erratic behavior threatens to expose the friends, the group of friends. So Henry and Camilla and Charles and Francis, they, under immense pressure and stress and paranoia, decide to kill Bunny to protect themselves from his from him just telling people he's been drinking too much, and they're worried that he might spill their secret to his to someone else on the campus. And in the later parts of the novel, the story deals with the emotional, moral, and psychological fallout of this murder and the murder of the farmer during the ritual. And the relationships within the group begin to deteriorate. They begin to fray. Guilt, paranoia, and substance abuse spiral. They all start drinking too much, and they're popping pills, and eventually, the group's internal bonds fracture, and tragedy leads to further tragedy. And it's a novel about the seductive danger of intellectual elitism, the blurred lines between morality and aesthetics, as well as alienation, guilt, and this longing or desire for transcendence. And finally, it's about the haunting consequences of secrecy and violence. And so this isn't a crime novel in the sense of working out, who the killer is. The crime is revealed up front, and what follows is a slow but just incredibly gripping. I wish I could go back and read this novel for the first time, but very suspenseful. This unraveling of the characters' personalities, their psychology just begins to fall apart as as the guilt and the paranoia slowly eats away at them. And yeah, okay, so. Another very interesting part of the legacy of The Secret History. So it was originally published back in 1992. I can't believe it that it's been so long. Like, honestly, it's ridiculous. I feel so old. But over the past decade or so, there's been this kind of cultural and aesthetic movement, which is referred to as dark academia. And this has sort of spread, meme like viral fashion across platforms like Tumblr and Instagram, and I assume TikTok, but I'm obviously far too old to ever look at TikTok. And it's dark academia is essentially this sort of a fascination or obsession with depictions of classical literature. So think old libraries and candlelit dining rooms in mansions and secret societies, and just this sort of romanticization of elite academic life, and often has a sort of Victorian Gothic kind of feel or atmosphere to it. Uh, and at the heart of this trend, apparently, I'm not an expert in the dark academia trend, but a lot of people, when you're looking this up online, they place The Secret History as the founding text of dark academia, or one of the founding texts of dark academia. So they say that, Donna Tartt didn't just sort of anticipate this trend or this genre, that she really kind of defined it for the first time. So people will point to this moody New England setting. I've never visited New England, but the books in all, the books and movies that are set there, looks wonderful. It looks like a fantastic place to have some sort of fascinating experience, and these sort of intellectual, aloof characters like Henry in the novel, ancient languages, ambiguous practices of dark arts, and the sort of blending or intertwining of beauty and evil, and this type of thing. And so people often attribute this sort of aesthetic or thematic trend, when they're tracing it back, they trace it back to The Secret History. So I don't know. I apologize if you're a dark academia fan out there and I've got it wrong, but that seems to be at the root of dark academia. I love The Secret History, but I have to say I haven't followed this dark academia trend very well. But I'm quite interested now to read some of these other books and things that are mentioned. So if you have any dark academia recommendations, please let me know. So when I first read, sorry, excuse me. So when I first read The Secret History, I think I was a student at the time at the University of Edinburgh. And of course, Edinburgh's a very beautiful city to be a student in, and it has lots of kind of Gothic elements. And there was something about reading The Secret History around, whilst having the experience of being a student in Edinburgh, that was very captivating. And just in general, I can remember being, just absolutely spellbound by this world that Donna Tartt had created. There was just something sort of dangerously enticing about it all. This, leaving home, starting fresh, reinventing yourself amongst the Gothic architecture of the university. And this idea of being handpicked for an elite and mysterious circle of friends, and studying arcane books, and speaking dead languages, drinking too much red wine, all of these kind of things, chasing forbidden knowledge, and all of it steeped in beauty and secrecy and the quiet thrill of academic transgression. It's a very intoxicating mix of elements. I'm not sure how I'd feel about it if I read it now for the first time as an adult, but at the time, it was massively captivating. And even the characters are obviously very far from being admirable, but they're magnetic precisely because of this, right? They're sort of walking this fine line between brilliance and madness, between this sort of beautiful aestheticism and amoral actions. And I think Tartt really taps into this, just a timeless student fantasy, right? Everything from Harry Potter to any other number of books about the campus novels or the coming of age novels that take place at the during the university, right? The university, it's not just sort of your a path into adulthood, but into another life entirely, and perhaps one that feels richer and more mythic than perhaps anything you've known before. Subsequently, I've become quite disillusioned with further education, but that's a story for another day. So anyway, there's a lot of very compelling themes in Secret History. So I'll try and touch on a couple of them. So the corrupting power of beauty and intellect. So we have this group of students, young students. They're very much in thrall to this very sort of charming professor, this guy Julian, and they're drawn to beauty, philosophy, and these ancient Greek ideals. And he's sort of leading them into the study of these things. And he's very influential on them. And their pursuit of these sort of aesthetic and intellectual goals, is kind of academic intellectual purity, eventually leads them to justify these very immoral acts, including ultimately murder. And so what Tartt is doing here, she's exploring how the beauty and brilliance of these extremely, academically gifted young people, but when it's unchecked by empathy or what most people would think of as meaningful ethics, can become a very dangerous and corrupting force. And what she's asking us is what happens, or where if you can you sacrifice morality for this sort of pursuit of academic transcendence, or in pursuit of ancient knowledge? Like these kids they kind of justify these awful crimes that they do because they're in pursuit of this ancient knowledge, or a different transcending the world around them. And so this leads into the next theme, which is to do with just the allure, but also the danger of elitism. And so, of course, this is a theme which is still very relevant. And but the novel does a fantastic job of just dissecting this seductive pool of exclusivity, right? So I mean, everybody wants to join the exclusive club. You want to be a member of the exclusive group, right? The bar that only lets you in if you have you're a special member. The group that you have to be invited into, right? And it looks at this in it's a sort of social context, an academic context, a cultural context, and this little group of students, Henry and Richard and Camilla, they form this elite little inner circle. They're kind of closed off from the trivial concerns of the rest of the college, who are doing these banal things like getting drunk at parties and all of this nonsense, right? They look down on it and they sneer at it. They think it's beneath them. But this elitism fosters a detachment from reality, the things that most of their peers around them would think of as just basic reality. And this contributes to this severe moral decay that they eventually experience. And so what Tartt seems to be critiquing is how these kind of insular environments ultimately, ultimately breed a kind of lack of accountability, a lack of empathy for other people, for people outside your little bubble of privilege and classical detachment. And so the story says how dangerous this insularity can become, this elitism can become, especially when it convinces this little group that they're untouchable, that they can get away with anything, they can do awful things, and it's perfectly fine. But of course, this isn't the case, and this leads to one of the next themes, which is guilt and psychological collapse. I've realized I thought this was going to take me, only going to be a few minutes, but it seems to be taking me a very long time to get through all this now. Anyway, okay, so this leads into, the next sort of, big issue in the novel. I think I'm going to skip some of these sections, but okay. So, the next big thing is, guilt and psychological collapse. So this section of the novel. So again, when I read this the first time, I can clearly remember just how gripping this section was, right? You know who's been murdered, right? You know why they did it. How can it be so gripping and so fascinating, like seeing what's going to happen, right? And but the novel really sings in these sections. It's just fantastic. So each of the characters, previously they've been this very, tight-knit little group. And but after they've done these awful things, they start to feel guilt, and they deal with these feelings of guilt quite differently. So some of them spiral into, alcoholism and pill popping, and some of them kind of disassociate, and they engage in some very self-destructive behaviors. Something also I just enjoy reading these scenes about these young kids just drinking. I don't know why I like it so much, but it's so great. They're always having another drink. They're drinking more gin, or they're opening a bottle of wine or something like that. And Henry as well he gets these terrible migraines. And I've had a couple of migraines in my life, and Donna Tartt uses those as part of the plot in a couple of ways, and just does it so well that Henry's experiencing some awful migraine where he has to get through some situation. So maybe like where they have to go to Bunny's funeral and deal with his devastated family. And Henry has this awful migraine as he's going through, as he's trying to comfort the parents of the boy that he's murdered, and it's just fantastic. So anyway, the characters are all intelligent and cultured. And this is another interesting thing, right? Maybe sometimes, dare I say it, especially these days in some movies, I don't think they're very good at writing intelligent characters. But Donna Tartt, her characters are intelligent, and that really comes across. They're extremely flawed. But they are intelligent. There's a couple of amusing things about. So at one point, I don't know how it comes up again, but someone mentions the moon landing. And Henry, right? So Henry's completely obsessed with, Greek literature, ancient literature, and he's like, when did that happen, right? He'd been completely oblivious to the fact that humanity had landed on the moon, and it's just such a funny little detail, but it seems kind of true to that character. Yeah, right. So anyway, Richard is sucked into this group, right? And he becomes, he's the narrator, so we see what's happening through his eyes most of the time. And he is repelled by what they've done, but maybe not as repelled as perhaps he should be. Maybe he's jealous, maybe that that he didn't get to participate as much as he might have wanted to. But eventually he does become increasingly complicit in their actions. So we have this guilt, this sort of psychological guilt, and this existential guilt that hangs over them, right? It haunts them. They can't escape it anywhere they go on this sort of snowy campus. And they try to rationalize their behavior to sort of try and escape from the emotional consequences of what they've actually done. And then Richard himself is a fascinating character, and his experience is really to do with identity and alienation, right? So he is sort of inside and outside, right? He's an observer and participant. He's always kind of pretending. He's always adjusting to trying to fit into this group. And so his story, it's about losing himself. If he ever really had a concrete idea of who he is, right? He's barely a person when he gets to the university. And so he's alienated from both his working class California background and the sort of elite East Coast college culture that he enters. And it reminds me of that I read in Train Spotting, in the Irvin Welsh novel, which I think I read maybe just a couple of years before this. The main character, Renton, so he's from a very working class background, but he goes to university, and he says the same thing. He says something like he was too much of a schemie, which means like working class person, to fit in at the university. But he was too sort of intellectual to sort of fit in with his sort of mates back in his hometown, his home neighborhood, his home area. And it's kind of similar to Richard, right? He is sort of inside and outside, right, for these reasons. And so much of the novel explores his attempts to sort of reinvent himself and belong to this group, even at this extreme cost of basic moral decency and behavior. But all of the characters in the group, they're struggling with their definition of their own identity. They're all kind of masking their genuine identity between these sort of personas that they've cultivated. The only one who maybe isn't faking it in a sense, might be Henry. There's a fantastic scene which I don't want to give away, where where someone makes somebody else a cup of tea in front of someone else, and it's just loaded with so much significance, and it's just incredible how you can invest this little scene with so much weight, and you realize the real nature of relationships between three of the people. Just fascinating, fantastic stuff. Shall I skip some of these, or how much time are we doing? 25 minutes. Oh dear. Okay, I guess it's going to be a long one. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So also, Henry is a super interesting character. So I think a lot of people who read this book, they love to hate Henry, right? They love to hate Henry. If anyone is the villain of the story, it might be Henry. But I suspect for the people who love, that's dare I say it, I think some of the people who love this dark academia trend, I think they might have a bit of a soft spot for Henry, in a sense, right? I think he embodies the dark romantic aspects of the dark academia trend. And I'm sure there's lots of young, maybe not so young people out there who are quite fond of the image that Henry brings to the novel. But he is extremely controlling, and he is so confident in his intellectual ability that he thinks he can control these events that they've all set in motion, and he thinks he can evade the guilt. Maybe he doesn't have any guilt, actually. Maybe he's pretending to be guilty, to feel guilty. And so in his story, we see how this idea of control just falls apart. That his sort of arrogance and his overconfidence ultimately lead to downfall. And of course, this has echoes of classical storytelling. And then finally, we've got the old chestnut of the unreliability, the unreliable narrator. I should have mentioned this when talking about Richard. So Richard is, it might be a little difficult to notice at first, but Richard isn't telling the truth all the time. His account of things is colored. He's definitely selectively editing some of the things that he tells us. And he's got a lot of emotional bias. He's looking at things in hindsight sometimes. And so this unreliability obviously raises questions about truth, perspective, and it shows how people construct false realities to cope with very stressful situations, or just to cope with life in general. He really is constructing this sort of false, a false version of the events that are happening to try and justify his own behavior, or to try and maybe let some people that he's really fond of off the hook. And this is all very 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 interesting. So overall, what are the strengths of the book? So the characters in this book are fantastic, right? They're all extremely memorable. And a lot of these days, I think, again, this is a skill that seems like, I don't know if it's in decline, or if maybe the fashions or the styles have changed and I'm just out of touch, and I don't I'm not reading the right books, or I don't read as much fiction as I used to. But a lot of like these characters feel like characters. Like when they speak, it's like, oh yeah, that is what that character would say. At no point will you be thinking, yeah, that they wouldn't, no one, that guy wouldn't be saying that, she wouldn't be saying that, right? And so the characters are fantastic. Henry, as much as people love to hate him, he's a great character. He's cold, he's brilliant. And Bunny is a great character. Again, Bunny's another character which I think they're all characters that people love to hate. Bunny is a very amusing character. There's an early Donna Tartt's also great at doing these sort of set pieces, these sort of literary set pieces. And there's an earliest scene where Bunny invites Richard out for a meal, and they go to some fancy restaurant, and they have like a massive meal, several courses, and they're just drinking nonstop. And then Bunny Bunny gives the impression that he's from extremely old money, that he's extremely rich. Turns out this might not be the case. And when it comes to paying the bill, and of course this becomes very embarrassing, but that dynamic between the working class boy Richard, who assumes that Bunny is the rich kid who's going to pay for meal, it's very amusing and just a great scene. And then Camilla and Charles are the twins, and Henry is in a relationship with Camilla, but maybe Richard is quite infatuated. And maybe he thinks he's hiding this infatuation, but maybe he's not doing a very good job at that. But the dynamic between the characters are, very complex, and just magnetic. They're just a magnetic group of characters, and it's just just character-driven storytelling at its best, like top notch character-driven storytelling, and like Charles is damaged and tragic. Like the Charles storyline is maybe the saddest part of the story. Poor Charles. I don't want to say, I don't want. I've already given some spoilers, but I don't want to say too much. But anyway, they all feel like real. I mean, it's a cliche, like real people, but they're distinct. They're very fully realized. They have they seem like real personalities. They have flaws, the interpersonal dynamics. They drive the plot forward in meaningful ways. It makes sense, right? And it's just extremely engaging. Extremely engaging. I think Tartt's a brilliant writer. I've seen people criticize Tartt's writing. I just don't know what they're talking about. I listened to a podcast. I think it was a Vulture podcast, and one of the people reviewing the book said she's exactly the writer that she wants to be, and I think she is. There's an extremely high level of confidence in her writing. Her writing, it's rich, it's intelligent, it's atmospheric. She writes these amazing set pieces, amazing characters, and just has a cool, elegant style. She's not rushing, she's not pandering, and just reading it, it really does feel like you're being let in on this secret world. That you're hearing people's secrets. A structure is also very effective, so you get this murder at the start. And so who did it, right? Who's been murdered. They're going to get murdered. So it's and just the way that plays out is just extremely effective. And then just the atmosphere. You can feel, like, I haven't been to a fancy liberal arts college in New England, but you can just feel the atmosphere. You can feel this college, the snowy Vermont woods, the sort of dark, the dark sort of atmosphere of the campus in the evening. These sort of whiskey and wine soaked, boozy nights that the students have. And I think it's a fictional place, but it really feels like a real place. And again, I think she just evokes this atmosphere just so well, with such detail. It's very beautiful, but it's also very claustrophobic. And this just enhances all of these things: the theme, the characters, the tone, and it just contributes to the sense of moral detachment that the characters experience. What else do I want to say? I've got a couple other little things. So yeah, I'm a really big fan of Donna Tartt. She's only done 3 novels, which is remarkable, right? So she did The Secret History was in 1992, and it's probably her most tightly plotted novel, arguably her most influential. And then it was 10 years later she did The Little Friend. That's like a Southern Gothic novel, and it's slower and it's less focused. And I think at the time people were a little disappointed with A Little Friend. Like, it was the follow up to Secret History. It had been 10 years, and I think people were kind of disappointed. I'm going to try and review that soon. I think actually it deserves another look from people who were disappointed. And then 11 or so years after The Little Friend, she did The Goldfinch. And The Goldfinch obviously won the Pulitzer, and it was also very big, sold a couple of million copies. and that is more of a sprawling kind of epic as well, and fantastic. Um, and yeah, so what was I going to say there about that? Right? Yeah, so they're all quite different. Also, it's been over 10 years, Donna Tartt. So come on, where's book number 4? But anyway, the free books that she has published, they're all beautifully written, but they serve very different emotional reading experiences. And I've got another, just a fun little maybe Easter egg. Is a lot of people know this, so this won't be news to many Donna Tartt fans. But she was friends with, or she went to university with, Bret Easton Ellis. So Bret Easton Ellis wrote Less Than Zero, Rules of Attraction, American Psycho, and he gives a sort of little makes a little reference to The Secret History in the Rules of Attraction, and so he mentions in Rules of Attraction, that's another sort of campus novel, which I think I can't remember now, but I think it's set in the same place. Not this same place from Secret History, but similar sort of place. And in that story, one of the characters mentions, oh yeah, there's this group of weird, eccentric classic students, and we think they're like roaming the countryside, like killing farmers. And so he makes this little sort of jokey reference to the students in Tartt's book. Very funny. And I think she actually dedicated. Maybe I'm making that up. I think she dedicated this book to Bret Easton Ellis. Maybe I made that up? I'll check very, very quickly. Hold on 1 second. Secret History dedication. Maybe I made that up. All right. No, yeah, dedication, The Secret History, Bret Easton Ellis and Paul Edward McGloin. Don't know who Paul Edward McGloin is. But Ellis was a fellow student of Tartt's at Bennington College. McGloin was a close friend. So yeah, so anyway, she was close to Bret Easton Ellis, and that's why she dedicated the book to him, and why he made this little reference in Rules of Attraction. Anyway, another thing that I think is super interesting about The Secret History is it's never been adapted. Right, there's never been a film adaptation, never been a TV adaptation, and especially in like the past several years of this area of what was it called, peak, what do they call it, peak streaming or something, or peak TV, or like prestige TV or something. And you have these actresses now like Nicole Kidman and, oh god, who's the Legally Blonde girl. But they have these they have production companies which really just focus on doing these like book to screen adaptations, right? So you've got all the streaming services, you've got this sort of book to screen adaptation over the past, it's really ramped up the past decade or so, and there isn't an adaptation of Secret History, and it just seems ripe, right, for that kind of adaptation. I'm not saying I want an adaptation, but it seems like something that would have been adapted. And so I looked into this briefly for making this video, and there have been several attempts to adapt it. So in the 90s, right, so just after it was published, a very famous producer called Alan Pakula bought the rights and brought on Joan Didion. Joan Didion did actually write a few movies back in the day, and John Gregory Dunn to write a screenplay. They had a director lined up, but then apparently this project sort of fell apart because Alan Pakula passed away. He died in 1998. But I mean, 1998, that was like 6 years after it had been published. And then I remember hearing about this attempt at an adaptation. So in the early 2000s, Harvey Weinstein, of all people, and his company Miramax, him and his brother's company, they got involved. They'd worked with Gwyneth Paltrow on like Shakespeare in Love and things like that. And Gwyneth Paltrow was going to play Camilla. And apparently Gwyneth Paltrow's brother, who is apparently a movie producer, he was going to produce. And I can kind of see Gwyneth Paltrow at that age. Like, think Gwyneth Paltrow the way she looked in the movie Seven. I could see her being Camilla, and I think her star persona. I think it would have suited that character. But obviously that didn't happen. Apparently that didn't happen because Gwyneth Paltrow's father passed away. And then in 2013, there was another attempt for a TV adaptation this time with the screenwriter for Twilight. And apparently Bret Easton Ellis was attached as a writer as well for that one. But again, nothing came to it. And then there was an adaptation of The Goldfinch, which was not very successful. It's not great. And it was a big flop. And after that, apparently Donna Tartt has become, or she's vowed not to adapt any more of her works after the negative reception to The Goldfinch. And honestly, I think that might be for the best. I don't want to see these characters anymore. You know, I think just let it stay as a book, right? Not everything has to be adapted, for Netflix or for a movie or something like that, right? Like, I don't think you're going to capture it, right? You're definitely not going to capture it for all the people that love this book, right? For this sort of slow burn of the storytelling, the voice, the atmosphere. I just don't think it's going to happen. So just don't do it. And as I was reading this, because I've got other things on my mind, so I couldn't help. I didn't think about these things so much when I read it originally all those decades ago. But I think you can read a political kind of allegory into The Secret History. So we can see this as a book that's critiquing the corrupting influence of insular elite groups on broader society. And it doesn't, it doesn't explicitly name, political systems. She's not engaging in ideological arguments or anything like that. But it does have this depiction of a privileged, secretive academic clique, and they're completely untethered from morality, from responsibility, or from the consequences of their actions, right? And I think we can absolutely see parallels to real world power structures anywhere you look, right? And so you have this elite group of students. They're handpicked by an eccentric professor who grooms them. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was going to be speaking as long. And they operate outside the remit of the university structure, so they don't really interact with the rest of the campus. They don't have any exams. They've no oversight from the rest of the university. So the professor grooms them or mentors them in this very rarefied environment. He creates in them a sense of exceptionalism, and this uniqueness that he said, no, you're unique. You can do whatever you want. You're special, right? This leads into it sort of precipitates this fall into extreme hubris and moral decay. They believe they're above the rules. Does that sound like any groups of elites that you can think of? So of course, I think now you and maybe Donna Tartt, the kids that she was studying with at her university, they would go on to be the elites at a lot of the powerful institutions in America, right? So she knew these elite people. Maybe she was commenting on them, right? Maybe these kids are a metaphor for the privileged elites in the real world. So politicians or the bankers or tech moguls or whoever. You get these groups of people. They're surrounded by other like-minded people. They're disconnected from ordinary life. Listen to a British politician speak. They don't know what ordinary life is, and they think they're untouchable. And like the kids, like this elite little group, they often close ranks, right? When something bad happens, they rationalize their despicable actions. They create some kind of spurious internal logic that justifies these terrible things for the greater good, or out of necessity, or too big to fail, or whatever it is. So the murder of Bunny, this is really about the social cost of elite isolation. He's a member of their group, but he's treated as an unfortunate necessity. His murder, it's just, well, we have to do this, right? We need to kill this guy because he's going to damage us, right? He has to go, and we shouldn't feel bad about it. And this action destroys not just Bunny's life, but it has an effect on lots of other people. And I think this, dare I say it, echoes how real world elites often shield themselves from accountability. They prioritize reputation. They prioritize their status over justice or transparency. And Henry and Charles and everyone, the rot seeps in slowly. Their high ideals and ambitions are ultimately revealed to be rotting. And at the end, Richard reflects on how each of them has been emotionally and spiritually ruined, not just by this act of murder, but by the poisonous lies that they all agree to uphold, right? And there's one more thing that I wanted to mention. So I've watched I've watched a few videos, and I've got it on my reading list is to read some Christopher Lash, right? So I keep hearing Christopher Lash mentioned. And there's continuing from this sort of political metaphor, right? So Christopher Lash has this critique of elite detachment, right? He has this idea of the somewheres versus the anywheres. And I think we can kind of see a little bit of this in The Secret History, right? So Christopher Lash wrote a book called The Revolt of the Elites, and he criticizes the modern elites for being rootless, credentialed, right, and self-serving, right? Rootless. So think of the rootless cosmopolitan elites. And sometimes called the managerial elite, the managerial class. And these somewheres, right? The somewheres in this his framing, they represent people who are grounded in their hometown. They're grounded in their community, their traditions, in an actual place which they feel that they authentically are of and belong to. Whilst the anywheres, they are the sort of cosmopolitan, think like the what do you call it? Digital nomad, who are often disconnected from the people that they govern or influence. And so in The Secret History, right, these young elites, right, this young group of elites, they're like the anywheres, right? They're being trained to be the anywheres, right? They're intellectually elitist. They look down, right, on the other students. They don't just look down on the people they call townies who live outside the campus. They look down on the other students. They're the elite of the elite. They sort of live in this sort of abstract world where they're cut off from what real people care about or think. They're out there, they're sort of operating completely outside of traditional social norms, what any other person would think is an acceptable social norm. They don't really have any regular classes. They don't get graded the same way. They don't have the same type of accountability, and their actions have terrible consequences for everybody around them. And they sort of disguise this. They can just move forward. They can, they try to, swan off into the sunset because of their sort of money and their academic and intellectual and institutional privilege. And Richard, though, he begins as a somewhere, right? He's a working class kid from from wherever he's from, and he is seduced by the lifestyle of these anywheres. He wants to be an anywhere, right? And so his sort of story, his arc in the story, is about this seduction of wanting to belong to this elite group, right? And this sort of negative impact that it has on him. I think I'm beginning to waffle a little bit now, and so I apologize. So anyway, really, what Tartt and Lash are saying, or maybe saying, the elites are too insulated. They get drunk on their own power. They're intoxicated by their own intelligence or their own sense of intelligence, and they lose all sense of responsibility to real people around them, right? And okay, I'm going to wrap things up. I'm beginning to talk nonsense, right? So anyway, it's it's not a political novel in the traditional sense, but I guess we could make some arguments to say that there are some implications there. Anyway, I'm going to try and review The Little Friend sometime soon. Have you read The Secret History? What did you think? Is it brilliant? Is it overrated? I mean, this book, I think most people, when they read this book now, they're aware that it has this big reputation and it has so many fans. So maybe you were unimpressed. Maybe you were underwhelmed if you read it recently. Or do you prefer one of the other novels? Anyway, thanks for watching. I apologize for waffling, and I'm going to try and do another video today. So hit the buttons and take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you. Two people. I've got 3 people watching. That's the most people I've ever had watching. Hello. How are you? Can you speak? Oh, somebody left. Oh dear. Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to end the stream now. So take care. Bye bye.